Hi, I'm Gretchen Hirsch, and I'm a sewing blogger and designer. And today I'm going to be talking about using zippered welt pockets in a sewing project. So the pants I'm wearing now, you can see I put 2 zippered welt pockets in, and I came up with this design after I saw a really expensive pair of pants that used this feature. And it's just 2 pockets, and you see they have a pocket lining that I did in polka dot, and they zip shut. And it's just a different look because you can see the metal teeth of the zipper. So when I was figuring out how I was going to do this, I was thinking about the kind of zipper you would need. And it's a little bit different from what you would use in a skirt or at the top of a dress or something like that, because you don't want it to open at the top. So this is a regular zipper. You'll see a regular separating zipper. It separates at the top, and it has 2 stops on either side, but it opens up. Now, the kind of zipper you're going to want to look for is called a pocket zipper, and it's especially for this kind of application. So you'll see when I open this zipper up, it separates in the middle, but not on either side, because it does have that top stop. So that's what you're looking for. It's perfect for this kind of zippered pocket. So what you're going to be making is essentially a welt pocket that has a zipper inserted into it rather than a welt. So when I was figuring out how I was going to do this, I just grabbed a piece of scrap flannel that I had around and tried it out first. And I really recommend that you do the same, because this, like a bound buttonhole or a welt pocket, you're going to be cutting a hole into your fabric, into your garment, and you've already started your garment. So really good idea to practice this out first and make sure you're happy with all the combination of fabric and thread and zipper and all that stuff. So what you're going to do is you're going to start out with your fabric. Actually, first let me show you some of the features on this. You'll see it does have the zipper here, and it's top stitched around the zipper, and there's the opening. Now if I turn this over, this is called the pocket bag. And this is actually the body of the pocket when you stick your hand in. And this right here is called silk organza, and this is what I use to stabilize the opening, and I'll show you what I mean right now. So you're going to start with your garment. I'm just going to be using a piece of fabric, and on the inside of your garment, you're going to interface where the pocket is going to be. So I've just done a patch of interfacing, fusible interfacing, and I pinked around the edges, because pinking the interfacing will help it from showing a little ridge through on the right side of your garment. So now what I'm going to do is mark the pocket placement. Now on these pants, I slanted them down a little because I found that to be like a really flattering angle. I've also seen them straight across, however you want to do it. So your opening is going to be 5 inches because the pocket zipper is 5 inches. So I'm going to center right in the middle of this fusible, and I'm using disappearing ink marker. You want something that's really going to show up on your fabric and that you'll be able to see through a layer of silk organza. So I'm going to center my mark right where that interfacing is. I'm going to draw a line that's 5 inches long. And you'll want to mark each end. It's kind of like marking a buttonhole, a really, really long buttonhole. Okay, so I have 1 5-inch line, marks on either end, and now I'm going to mark the outer lines of this rectangle that we're going to make. And the ideal size for your opening to be is 1/2 inch, because that just gives you a perfect opening with the zipper teeth there. So I'm going to make a 1/4 inch line on either side of my original line. And if you've ever made bound buttonholes, you'll recognize a lot of this process. It's very, very similar. Okay. So now what I have is a rectangle with a line down the center. And this is essentially our welt. So now I'm going to take a piece of silk organza. And I use silk organza because it's really strong, very lightweight, and sheer. And it's going to help us get a really nice, crisp welt opening. So you're going to center it over your mark. And I'm going to pin it in place from the right side. And you want this piece of organza to be on grain, by the way. So either lengthwise or crosswise grain going up and down here. And I'm going to take this over to my machine. And I'm using just a regular all-purpose thread. And I have a zipper foot on right now because that's what I'm going to use in the next step, but you could be using your regular presser foot here. Now I'm going to start in the middle of 1 long line on one side, so 1 long end of this rectangle, rather than starting at a corner, because you just get a nicer finish this way. So I can see my marks through the silk organza, and I'm going to stitch all the way around. Now when I get to the short end, I want to pivot. And just like you would with a bound buttonhole, I'm going to count the number of stitches it takes me to get to the other side so that I can make it consistent on the other short end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm going to do 7. So now I want to remember 7 for the other side. So now I'm going to go down that other long end. And just really important to be precise here because this is going to determine the shape of your welt. Okay, so again, 7 inches across the short end, 7 stitches across the short end, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now I'm going to pivot again, and I'm going to overlap where I started my original stitching, just by like maybe ½ inch, ¼ inch. And so I don't need to backstitch because I've gone over this area twice. It's very secure. Okay, so I've stitched all around that rectangle, and now I'm going to make my cut into it. So this is the kind of scary part if you haven't made a test of this, but since I made a test, I know what I'm doing, so I feel good about cutting right into my garment. And what you want to do is fold it in half a little bit, make sure it's right on top of each other, and then make one little snip into the middle of the rectangle. And now you're going to cut to one end, about ¼ inch away from the end of the box, and then cut into each corner, as close as you can without cutting the stitches themselves. Okay, so same thing on the other side. Kind of cut about ¼ inch away and cut into each corner. And now I can take my pins out. And what this is going to allow me to do is turn the organza to the wrong side of the fabric, which is going to create this really beautiful, clean opening. So as you can see, it's turned to the inside now. And at this point, I would press this. And I would use the organza to pull those edges out of the way. And I'm going to show you what the clean pressed version looks like. So see how it has these really nice clean edges. And once we get the zipper in there, you won't be able to see the organza at all. So this is your opening. We can trim this organza down later. You don't really need that much, but I like to work with a bigger square just because it's helpful to me. So now we're going to put the zipper in. I think this is the fun part because you see it all coming together. So I'm just going to put the zipper behind the opening like this, center it. Very important that it be centered and not on an angle. I'm going to pin it in place. So here I'm going to stitch this in. I'm going to start at this corner, and you're edge stitching along the edge of your rectangle. So all the way around the zipper, using the zipper foot. Of course, being careful not to hit any metal parts. And so when I get up here, I'm going to be really careful that the zipper pull stays out of the way. And there are a lot of metal parts underneath here, so be really careful when you're pivoting. And I often walk my foot across here, so I make sure I'm not going to hit anything because I've broken many a needle in my day. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now I can go across the other side. And now across the bottom, I'm going to pivot. And again, I want to be really careful that I'm not going to hit that stop there. I'm going to pivot and connect to my first line of stitching. Okay. And you can pull the threads through to the back. You don't actually have to back stitch. It gives you a nicer look to pull them through. So now I have my zipper inserted, and the last thing to do is to put the pocket bag on. So I've cut out a rectangle of pocket fabric that I want, it's lining fabric, that I want, I figured out the size that I want my pocket to be and doubled it. So what you're going to do is first you're going to sew one side and then the other onto the zipper tape. So I'm going to pin, I stitch from this side underneath this little fold. So you're going to line up the raw edge of the lining with the raw edge of your garment fabric. And so the first thing you would do is stitch along here on the machine using your zipper foot. Once you have that stitched in place, you can stitch the other side. It's the same thing. You're going to line up the raw edge with the edge of the zipper tape, pin it in place underneath the organza, like that. And I'll just show you how to stitch one of these sides. So again, you need the zipper foot because it's going to help keep everything out of the way. And you want to start stitching at the edge of your lining fabric and backstitch. And I'm stitching as close as possible to the garment without actually stitching on the garment fabric itself, on the outside of the garment. I'm just stitching on this little strip of fabric where we initially made the welt. And back stitching. So you can see I've made one line of stitching up there. So that side of the pocket bag is secure. I would do the same thing on the other side. And then the last thing is making sure that the pocket bag is going down rather than up, because believe it or not, I have done that twice in a row. You're going to stitch the edges together of the pocket bag. So let me just show you on the original sample what that looks like. So now your pocket will be a complete square. So that's it. That's your final step. And that is how you're going to insert a zippered welt pocket.